Hello there, happy Friday. I've been on the deck, I've been coaching all morning, so I'm really amped up and really excited and really just in the coaching and swimming state of mind. So the training that I am going to go through today, so this is actually something that is a full lesson within the program that I'm launching. It's one of the first lessons because it's extremely important. And as I was recording it, as I was like drawing it up, I just had the inspiration that I feel like there's a lot of people, this is actually applicable to more than just breathing. Like I'm looking at it, or I've looked at it in more of a breathing perspective, but it actually is something that can be applicable to anyone, no matter what level you're at. And so I thought that the audience would, you guys would get value out of it, whether you're someone who is struggling to breathe or whether you're someone who's more of an advanced swimmer that already has the breathing down and you're looking for some more advanced stuff. So I just figured I'd share it with you because I think anyone at any level will be able to find some value in it. So there's three big struggles or three big reasons that people struggle when they're trying, when they're trying to breathe when they're swimming. And I think, as I mentioned, these are struggles not just with breathing, but as you're trying to become a better swimmer, regardless of where you're at. And the first big reason that people struggle when they're trying to learn how to breathe, or even again, when they are trying to learn how to swim in general or trying to become a better swimmer, is water is inherently different than land. And many people grow up, we're land animals. We spend most of our time on land for the most part. And especially if you're learning how to swim as an adult or someone, you're just getting into the water when you're an adult, it's very different. It's a different environment. You're in a body of water. You are dealing with buoyancy and a little bit less gravity. When you're swimming, you're in a face down position, which there's very few places that I can even think of where you're like operating in a face down position. So it's just, you're in a different environment. And when I'm saying you're in a different environment, what that means is change. You are dealing with change. And when you have change, when your body is dealing with something that it's not used to, your body and your mind, change equals stress. So whether it's like the stress that you physically feel or it's just stress from a mindset perspective, you might not even notice it. You might not have physical symptoms, but if you're in a different environment where there is change, you're automatically dealing with stress. And again, it might not be physically presenting itself, but your brain sometimes is like, okay, well, this is different. Oh my gosh. And it kind of like makes you a little bit anxious or even excited. And when you have stress spikes your adrenaline. And so adrenaline is when adrenaline is spiked, it also, that's the fight, flight, or freeze response for anyone. So if you're in the water, it's a different environment. You're feeling a little nervous. It's different. Your adrenaline spikes, and then your body is going through the fight, flight, or freeze. And physiologically, what happens there is that you tense up a little bit. So what happened? Yeah, when that happens, your adrenaline goes up. You tense up. You shorten your breath. You might freeze, you might just like tense up. And when you tense up, you actually tend to sink in the water. Or you forget to breathe, or it's just, you make it a lot harder on yourself. And I think this happens on a very baseline level for some people. Like sometimes it's obvious, people know they get in the water and they're just automatically tense, or it's really hard for them. But I think I've worked with so many athletes where they think they're okay, but when we start to work through some exercises and some drills, they start to realize how that response is actually manifesting for them. And it's something that we actually have to work through. Like I actually have one athlete who swims multiple times a week and was just like, I just feel like after a certain point, I'm getting tired earlier than I should. And so I was like looking at their stroke, and everything in their stroke looked for the most part fine. Like there wasn't anything that really was signaling to me. And when I started having them do some exercises that kind of pushed that comfort level a little bit, just very simple things, like nothing crazy, I noticed that like all of a sudden that anxiety and that stress level started bubbling up. So then we worked together. I gave him some exercises that really helped him gently move past that anxiety. And then all of a sudden he was able to double the distance that he was swimming before that feeling came up. And that was just in one, maybe 2 sessions together, where all of a sudden it completely changed everything for him. So I think sometimes it's very obvious, but sometimes the response to being in this different environment is a little bit more subtle, but it still can have a huge impact on how you're doing in the water. So I think, like, just to talk about how to overcome it, or like this, water being different, this different environment, is just being aware of it is actually a huge way to help yourself overcome it. Just noticing when that happens, noticing when you're feeling like you're starting to tense up a little bit, and trying to just calm yourself down a little bit. And just trying to stay loose, just being mindful. When you feel yourself starting to tense up, try to do things that help yourself relax a little bit. All right, the second reason is, this is so funny, but it's so true, is that we as humans who live on land take breathing for granted. So the big reason, the second big reason that we struggle with our breathing and our swimming and when we're trying to improve is we take it for granted. It is normally a behavior. It is something we do. We don't have to think twice about it. There's a part of our brain that tells us we need oxygen, and we just do it without even thinking twice about it. And we just take it for granted. And so when we get into the water, we try to take it for granted. And when you're learning how to swim, it's one of those things that you can't take for granted. When you're learning how to swim, and not just learning how to swim, but trying to become a more efficient swimmer, trying to really build that efficiency into your breath, you really need to focus on it. And in order to create habits, to make habits, to change habits, it takes a lot of focus over an extended period of time to make sure that you're doing it correctly. And so when you start, when you go from in the land to in the water, you actually need to put a very conscious focus to breathing. You need to pay attention to it. You need to think about it. And this is not just for breathing. Again, this is from a breathing perspective, because this is just what I'm working on for the program. But in any habit that you're trying to change when you're in the water, you have to put a conscious focus to it over an extended amount of time. And often this is putting a conscious focus to things that we normally don't have to think about. Like, even if you take it to something broader, like how you're doing your pull underwater, or something where it's a little bit more advanced than just breathing, like you have to put a lot of conscious focus to something you don't really think about very often. And so you have to just pay more attention to it. But I will say, like, it sounds like a lot, or that I'm putting a lot onto this, or like I don't want it to seem harder. The reason that I bring this up is a key reason is because if you give it that attention, it's more of a time period where if you give it the right amount of attention, or if you're able to give it the right amount of attention for a longer, for whatever time it's required, it's one of those things. It's like it's like a ladder. You get to that certain point, you pay attention to it, you step on the ladder. Once you get that, you cross that finish line and you're good. It goes back to being an unconscious behavior unless you're trying to change something new. So anytime you approach any of these changes or these habits, especially for things that we take for granted, we don't really have to think about. It's just a matter of getting it, whatever change you're trying to make that change. And then it will eventually go back to being an unconscious behavior. You just have to put in the work over the amount of time. So I don't want to scare anyone away, I feel like, by just saying, you have to pay some attention, you have to pay attention to it to make changes. But then, eventually you're going to go back to having it be an unconscious behavior. So I think in the breathing context, especially, like, the way to overcome it is a lot of people just forget to breathe. They take it for granted when they're on land, and when they're in the water, they just start, you're thinking, okay, what am I doing with my arms? What am I doing with my legs? And you're thinking about, how do I turn my head? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I think what I find most often is that people take, because you're so used to taking it for granted, you get in the water and you almost take it for granted there. And again, this is not just applicable to breathing. In this example, I'm using breathing, but that, having that attention and where you're putting attention and having to pay attention to things that you might not normally have to pay attention to is definitely a struggle, but you can overcome it. You just need to give it some attention, get it to the level, where it becomes a natural habit where and then you don't have to think about it again until maybe you need to come back to it to work on something new. All right, the third key reason that people struggle is when they're trying to breathe, and actually this one is a lot broader than just breathing, and it's applicable to everything, is that a lot of people, a lot of athletes, a lot of triathletes, a lot of swimmers that I work with, if they don't get something right away, they either just try to ignore it or they just stop trying. They just are like, okay, this is the level I'm at. It looks like I'm not going to get it, and I'm just going to have to deal with it. So I'm just going to do everything I can to work. Like there's this one, it's like, do you want to take the short and quick path? Or, okay, you can't, you feel like you're stuck. So maybe I'll just do everything. I'll work around everything else to get to the same point by going all the way around and modifying everything else in my stroke. Athletes in general, because I think a lot of us are type A and very self-sufficient. It's like, well, if I can't figure this out on my own, I'll just figure it out a different way. Even if it's way more complicated, I'm just going to figure it out my own way. I'm super guilty of that. I do that all the time, is like, instead of asking for help or reaching out for help or trying to figure something out on my own in a smart way, I often do it the hard way and just, will do crazy things just to kind of figure things out on my own instead of doing it the smart way. So I think what I want to say here is that when we don't get it right away and we either stop trying or we try to ignore the problem, this applies to, again, anything. And this is not just swimming. Like this could be anything you're working on, definitely from a sports perspective, but even more broadly into life, is when you try something new, when you are trying to improve your stroke, when you're trying to incorporate something new into your technique, especially in swimming, but probably actually in many things differently, everything's going to feel super awkward at first. And I think if you go into it with the mindset that things are going to be a little tough at first, you're going to feel a little bit awkward, especially in the water, because like I mentioned from the first point, you're in a different environment, so things are going to be weird. That if you approach it knowing things are going to be awkward, that helps a lot, or that it's going to take a little bit of time and you might feel really out of sorts, but you'll get there. Like I always think anytime I give someone a new drill in swimming, no matter what they're working on, I'm always like, all right, so I'm telling you to add something new. So it's going to start feeling like, remember the first time, maybe when you're in elementary school and it was like, okay, pat your head and rub your belly at the same time. And I can't even do it right now as I was just trying to show you, but it's like trying to do different things where your brain is kind of trying to focus on two things. And how awkward was that at first, right? Crazy awkward. But then, one time you go back to it again and you just have it. And it's like, oh, now I can totally do this, right? Which I can't do it because I'm on a live and I'm panicking, but no. So I just want to say, like, anytime you do a new drill, I think if you go in with the expectation, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little awkward. That right away is going to help you from just feeling stuck or feeling like you can't get it. I will tell you that this is very, very common, no matter what level of athlete I work with, is when I give them that warning, like, hey, this is going to be awkward at first, and they try it, and maybe in the first session that they do it, they're kind of like, I don't know, flailing around a little bit, or it's a little strange, but many, many times, probably at least half the time or more, they come back the next session and then they're doing it perfectly, because that time between when you try it and then the next time that you try it, it's like that time, that rest period between your swimming sessions or whatever in this case, your brain and your body, like that mind-body connection, just like some things click, and then you come back and all of a sudden you're doing it very naturally and very, like, it happens. Or there's just a massive quantum leap in what you're doing between sessions. So even if it feels really awkward right when you do it, just do your best, let it rest. And then oftentimes when you come back and you try it again, you improve significantly. And I think a lot of people try things the first time and they're like, oh man, this is so weird. This is not for me. I can't do this. And then they just stop. And like I said, they try to take the long way around just to figure out a different way to do it, instead of just taking a little bit of time, staying committed to that one drill or a couple of drills, and just really until, just trusting that their body will get it. Because like I said, I've coached, I haven't really gone into my background all that much on these lives, but I have coached literally all levels from 6-year-olds to 85-year-olds, and teaching them how to swim from like the most basic level all the way up to people that are Kona qualifiers, and from a club like very good athletes at the club level as well. Even for the 80-year-olds that I've coached, they make incremental progress every time they go in, just by letting it sit, letting their body kind of absorb what they were doing, and then trying it again the next time, and again the next time, and eventually they will get it. So there's no one that can't get things. No matter who you are, no matter what your level is, you can learn new skills, you can learn new techniques. So my biggest way to overcome this is just to stay committed. And if you're working with a coach, whether it's me or you have your own coach, just trust them, trust the process, and have faith in yourself. Just have faith in yourself. I see so many people just doubt their abilities before they even get started, and they're just automatically shooting themselves in the foot before they even get the chance to really work and improve on things. So that's my little pep talk for you, is that no matter who you are, when you're watching this, how experienced you are or not, just no matter what you're trying to work on, whether it's swimming or it's something else in your triathlon or another, sport that you're doing or race that you're training for, is just to have patience and stay committed and trust yourself and have faith in yourself. And don't quit, please don't quit. So one of the ways that, I kind of touched on this before, but when you're learning something new, the process that I usually take all of my athletes through as we're learning new skills is each session, make sure you spend time reviewing what you did in the last session. This could be so sometimes I do hour lessons. We spend up to 30 minutes just reviewing the things that we did last session. So giving that time for that body to take a leap, take a leap, take a leap. So really, really taking that time to make sure you go back and revisit things, and not just from the lesson before, but we go back and review things that from when we first started working together, months ago. Always just reviewing and revisiting the basics, and those things is only going to help you accelerate forward as you learn new skills. So make sure in each session that you do, you review what you did the last session, measure your improvement. So make notice of ways that you improve, wow, this felt so much easier this time, or wow, I actually am floating a lot better this time than I was last time. I think it's real. A lot of us, again, going back to many athletes, are very, especially as adults, are very type A, or very motivated. We're always looking for the next goal. We're always trying to improve ourselves and look at the next goal. And that's fantastic. That's what makes us great athletes. But we often forget to notice how far we've come and just take a moment to appreciate it. And I think that's one thing that I really try to stress, is to notice how far you've come, and to try to just appreciate it for a sec before you start saying, okay, well, now I want to do this, and now I want to do this, and now I want to keep moving on to this. So I really just make sure that you notice, measure your improvement, and then from there, add on things that are new. So every practice or every training session, review the drills or the technique things that you've been working, that you had worked on. Notice and measure your improvement, and just notice and appreciate it. And then from there, make sure you're always adding something new that kind of pushes your boundaries, whether it's taking that skill just a step further, or trying something else that you're working on, just to kind of keep pushing the more that you kind of push your boundaries, the quicker you're going to improve in that regard. But again, this is part of a program that I have launched today to everyone. It's called Breathe Easier, Swim Farther, and it's everything that you need to know. So breathing efficiency is the foundation of swimming efficiency. And like I said, on Monday, I did a whole live that talked about a lot of the details to why that's the case. Breathing is the foundation. Once you get that breathing efficiency down, everything else when it comes to efficiency will come much easier. And I launched this program today. We actually are kicking off the first module of it. So this training and many other trainings will actually be live to the group, to the students on Monday, which is so exciting. I'm really excited. I just finished recording a bunch of the videos for it. So I wanted to go into a couple details really quick, just about the course itself. So I'm going to put a link in the comments as soon as we're done to go to a page that has a lot more details. But when I was creating this, I know a lot of people, when it comes to swimming, you know, I do a lot of coaching as well that's virtual, and that's one of the things that I keep getting a lot of questions about. So in this program, there's definitely a virtual component. There are trainings where I'm going to be going through concepts, and each module has some concepts that we're going to go through, where I'm going to just train you and kind of help you understand those. And then there's exercises that you'll be doing. And then throughout the course of the program, you actually will have the opportunity to get as much feedback from me as possible. So you'll videotape yourself, or videotape, oh my gosh, hello, this is 2019. You'll record yourself like on a phone. Actually, part of this course or program is that I have a guide to kind of tell you what I'm looking for. It's really simple. I don't need a lot to be able to tell you what you need to do to improve. But I'll give you a guide for that. So you can record yourself, send it to me, and I'll be giving you feedback along the way that's specific to what you're doing to help you make sure that you're mastering all of the steps of this process and that you're getting the most out of it. So it's a very high impact. It's a 3-week program, and there's on your own component, and then there's a group component, and then there's a you're working one-on-one with me component that goes along with it, so that you really get everything that you need out of the program. Again, my goal for this course for you, if you go into this program, is to help you to give you everything you need to learn how to use breathing, not just as a tool to improve your efficiency right now, but as a tool to help you continue to improve your efficiency ongoing. Because like I said, breathing is the foundational skill, but on top of that, in order to become an efficient swimmer, you need, it's technique outside of just your breathing technique. It's making sure that you have the endurance, especially for a lot of this audience, triathletes, like you need to have endurance and being able to build up your technique and hold your technique for longer extended periods of time. And then when eventually you get your endurance up, or as you're getting your endurance up, being able to translate all that into swimming faster and swimming, like generating more power, generating more propulsion when you're swimming. So again, this is the foundation, but it's so, so important, because if you can't get that foundation, if you can't figure out how to breathe, it's really hard to work on the things like stroke technique, to work on your endurance, and then to also work on your speed, your power, your strength in the water. So this is, again, I wanted to make this a really high impact, shorter program so that you can get this. Like, as I mentioned, once you nail this, like once you master this, like you can start working on everything else that kind of comes with it that's a little bit more traditionally looked upon, like technique and things. I want to get you to the point where your breathing efficiency is not the thing that's holding you back. And when I've worked, like I said at the beginning of the live, that I've worked with people who are very good swimmers who are actually still being held back by their breathing. They just don't know it, or they just work around it, because without like realizing the fact that like, oh, we're getting tired a little earlier, or I'm just not, feeling as strong as I should. Like I've seen breathing affect all levels. People have been swimming for years, people who have done Ironmans. And I think regardless of if you join this program or not, please take a second to think about what your breathing is doing. Question. Oh, will this help me not breathe water? Yes. So I definitely talk about this. There's a whole lesson in it. I will say though, I'm going to be completely transparent. I will tell you exactly what to do to not breathe water. It's going to take a little bit of practice though. So everything that I give you, like I mentioned in the second point today, is that I will give you all of the tools that you need. It's gonna take some practice. It's something that I've had great success with, and no one wants to inhale water. I actually tell you what, one of the common questions that I get from athletes like all the time is that they say, okay, well, I got water up my nose, like, what do I do? So I actually have some instructions on what to do there. It makes me laugh because no one likes to get water up their nose or in their mouth. No one likes to inhale water, especially if you're swimming in some lake or ocean, that you really don't want to do that. But yeah, so I definitely talk about it and there's actually going to be some drills and some exercises where you can practice it and become better at it. But the other thing I'll say is that, and I'm sure you understand this, there's even times where I get water in my mouth, or when I inhale some water from time to time, especially open water swimming. So another thing that I teach is like how to, especially because like if you're open water, if you're racing, the chance of you, even if your technique is perfect, the chance of you like getting some water from someone else who's swimming by you, especially like in a race situation, or if you're swimming in the ocean where it's there's some waves, is that I'll teach you how to how to get that water out, or like what to do so that you don't completely, stop your momentum and stop swimming as well. Did that help? Did I answer your question? I'm really wordy today. I'm like hyped up on coffee and was coaching all morning. So I'm like, yeah. Hopefully that helped. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday and have a good weekend. And I'll see you next week. All right, bye.